This is the On All Cylinders podcast,
powered by Summit Racing.
Your host for today is Summit Racing's Paul Sokolis, with special guest, drifting enthusiast Michael Barbosa.
Here we go.
Hey there, folks. Welcome to another installment of the On All Cylinders podcast. Paul Sokolis in your host chair today, and we've got a good one on tap because we are going to be covering a really fascinating subset of motorsports called drifting. If you've never experienced a drifting event before, it is a spectacle, and it's just amazing how these drivers are able to control their vehicles at the absolute performance envelope, which I realize is kind of a terrible description now that I've said it out loud. The good news is the gentleman on our show today will do a far better job describing drifting than I. Not only is he a Summit Racing employee, he's also an accomplished drifter and well plugged into the drifting community. Michael Barbosa. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to join you here.
Now, before we get to the meat and potatoes of drifting, let's hear it from you. We're going to start this interview where we typically do. Tell us your background. How did you become a gearhead?
So originally, my dad is what got me into everything originally. So he had a 72 Torino, which was his baby, basically. And then he got into cars, of course, motorcycles. And ever since then, I always wanted to be around that. My brother was into it. I had to be like, hey, I want to be part of the family too as well. So it'll get me into motorsports as well. And just anything with a motor.
So from there, what got you into drifting?
So funny enough is I used to actually go to drag racing over at Killcare Raceway in Ohio. That was my home track, basically. And a buddy of mine came to my house one day. He said, hey, we want to go to Killcare today. I was like, aren't they doing motorcycles today? He's like, no, the round track's got this thing, got people drifting out there. I was like, why? Sure, I'll go take a look at it. And I went there. So at first I looked at it and I was kind of like, man, this is kind of cool. This is kind of different. The guy came up to me and said, hey, do you want to go for a ride? Gave me a helmet. I was like, no way. And the crazy thing about it was a Nissan 240SX that looked like the Signal Auto, which is an old Japanese drift team, way out, of course, in Japan, where it all started. And the car was done up just like a Signal S13. I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to jump in this thing. I jumped in the car. My mind was blown like instantly. The second I sat in the car, the second thing went at a full SR20 motor, which at the time made a ton of horsepower. Like back then, though, back in 2005, if you had anything above 300 horsepower, you had a fast car. And that was insanely fast to me. And it was so good because of the fact that you were so out of control, but in control at the same time, to where your adrenaline's pumping, like you're seeing things go by, you're sideways, tires smoke, screeching, engines roaring. Like it was great. Like I was hooked the second I got out of the car.
Oh, that's awesome that you mentioned Killcare, because I grew up in Southwest Ohio, too, and Killcare was one of my favorite local haunts. You're talking about Killcare and Xenia, right?
Yep, Killcare and Xenia.
Been there many a time. But yeah, you did a great job explaining kind of the exhilaration, the rush of drifting. Again, far better than I can. So for folks who still may not be entirely hip to what drifting is, can you kind of break it down and explain exactly the process, the technique, what is drift racing?
So essentially, like you've seen people do a burnout, of course, and it's basically like doing a burnout, but sideways. But the difference is you're taking a car like drag racing, going as fast as possible in a straight line. But once you get to that straight line of drag racing, you stop. Us, for example, when we get to that corner or we get to a stopping point, we throw the car sideways as fast as we can or as hard as we can with as much angle, speed as we could throw into it, basically. And what you're supposed to do is take the skill of it of catching the wheel or catching the steering wheel. Because when you throw your car sideways, the car wants to counter steer, of course. What do? You give it more gas now to initiate more of a drift, is what they call, well, initiating a drift, I guess you would say. Catching the counter steer, and then you're controlling it not by the steering wheel, but by the throttle pedal. So essentially, the more gas you give it, the more the car wants to go. The less gas you give it, the more the car wants to straighten out. So you basically have to play a dancing game with your car of where to balance it.
You mentioned earlier that this kind of started in Japan. Can you give us a quick history of drifting and how it began?
So back in the mountains of Japan, back in the late, it could be 70s, 80s, it's just been going for how long? Kids used to go up with their cars and just sliding down the mountain. That was basically initially where drifting started, back in the mountains, and then it became a sport. There's a gentleman named Sachiya who I actually had met at one point in time. He had came to the U.S. for a couple of events, and it was crazy enough we got to meet him. Awesome time, super amazing human being. But he used to be a huge GT racer. And the reason why he did is because he was so fast, he was so good. The reason he got into drifting or did it during a GT race, he said it was having more fun than just driving fast around a corner. And after that, it became a big sport. And from that big sport, brought it to what we have now.
So when did drifting cross over from Japan into the United States? It seemed to recall its rise in popularity kind of correlated with the rise in the sport compact scene of the late 90s, early 2000s. Does that sound about right?
So back in, which is an event that I actually had went to, is they had an event called US versus Japan, which they had drivers. I don't know if you know, like Pikes Peak racer Reese Millen, for example. He was there for as well. They had brought out a couple other US drivers as far as like Von Gittin Jr. as well. He was in there. They brought people like Taniguchi, which is one of the biggest names in Japan. They also had brought in Kazama and a couple other like big name drivers, Yuio, Tanaka, a lot of these people here. And they had done an event over at Irwindale, US versus Japan. And as soon as they brought that over, that was back in 2001, 2002 time. It was I think it was 2001, 2002. And they had done the very first event there. Then ever since then, it just started to do this giant snowball effect. Like it wasn't huge, but it was growing. It caught traction. People saw it, and then more people wanted to do it. People were buying cars. People were buying whatever they could to try it out. Then you found out, oh, you need a front engine rear wheel drive car, best option you can come across. And then now it became a huge sport.
Now, I'm assuming this isn't just Japan and the US here. It's fair to say this is worldwide?
Oh, it's worldwide. Anywhere you go, somebody's drifting somewhere. Australia's got a huge drifting world community. Poland has a huge, huge upbringing with drifting. Australia, New Zealand, they got some of the amazing drivers, most amazing drivers you can even find. Ireland, for example, one of the top drifter in the world right now, James Dean, or even Peter Weisick. Or actually, Peter Weiss is from Poland, but James Dean, for example, he's considered the number one drifter in the world. He's from Ireland. Amazing guy, amazing driver.
Now, say someone's listening to this and decides, yeah, drifting sounds fun. This sounds like my jam. I want to get into it. Is there a steep learning curve involved, or can someone just jump in a car and start learning the ropes?
So the great thing about technology nowadays, I'm going to say this to begin with, sim racing. You can get yourself a cheap sim setup from Marketplace. Get it from Summit Racing, of course. We have our own sim stuff too, which is super nice. Assetto Corsa, one of the best games you can start with. Even a small computer can run it. Then try out your hand at that, see how you feel with it. If not, if you don't have the option, go to like your local track or look up anywhere drifting within your area. Somebody's going to hold an event somewhere, for example, and you can go to talk to anybody there, the event coordinator, say, hey, I'm new to drifting. I kind of want to get into this, or I want to see what it's like. A lot of the people, event organizers, will actually say, hey, let me get you with a driver. And they will actually put you in a passenger seat with a skilled driver so you can experience for the first time.
Not gonna lie, that sounds amazing. And say that approach works. Like they do the sim racing, they do a couple ride-alongs, and they get bit by the bug hard, and they want to dive in. What kind of car should they look for? What car makes a good drift car?
So anything front engine, rear wheel drive, manual. I've seen some automatics do it. It's interesting, but they can do it. But a lot of times, front engine, rear engine is probably the best. Or sorry, front engine, rear wheel drive is the best option to go with. Of course, there's nothing beats that because you can't do it with a front wheel drive, obviously. I mean, you can, but it's then considered like power sliding, just kind of throwing the car and sliding around. People used to do that with they used to take restaurant trays, put underneath your back wheels, hold the e-brake, and you slide around in parking lots when they're kids. Not now, but that was like back then. People used to do that.
You can't see it, but we're trading suspicious looks with each other. The things you do when you're young, and we'll just leave it at that. Now, I've been to a couple of drifting events. I've seen, a lot of twin turbo cars, a lot of LS swap cars. Do you need a lot of horsepower to do this?
Everybody thinks nowadays that you need all the horsepower because since the sport has grown so much, they have like horsepower wars basically from when it started. 300 horsepower was plenty, like way more than plenty. Get an old A86 Corolla, an FCRX7, Nissan 240SX. They had nothing more than maybe 150 to like 86 had less than 100 horsepower. A 240 RX7 or turbo RX7, you have like 200 something horsepower, and you're able to rip. Get some decent tires on there or overfill the tires enough to where it helps you slide a little bit better, and you can just have fun. And that's all you really need is just to have fun.
So horsepower aside, again, my limited exposure to drifting events, it seems like the one I went to, those cars were always banging off the rev limiter. They were just living up at the top end of that RPM band. Is that true?
So, for example, if you're running like a 240SX, you're anywhere between 55 to 6K, 7K, depending on your motor. If you're driving like a rotary, for example, which I started with, I thought it was scared because I was seeing like 9,000 RPM. I'm like, oh my gosh. But no, you're on there all day long and it's fun. So the biggest thing you have to worry about that when you're up that high though is make sure your car stays cool, of course, because when you're driving the road, your car's just driving. you're on RPM range, heat is created. So that's one of the biggest things you watch out for, though.
One thing we haven't mentioned yet, and obviously you know your stuff when it comes to drifting, but we haven't talked about your specific drift car yet. So let's take some time to do that. Tell us about your Mazda.
All right, so I drive a '04 Mazda RX-8. I know it's not everybody's favorite cup of tea. It's mine because I started with RX-7s, and I love rotaries. But my thing was the motors in that were less than desirable. So I ended up going the route of taking a RX-7 motor out of a third gen RX-7, big single turbo on there, got a Haltech ECU for it, big injectors on it. So I'm running about maybe anywhere between 6,000 to 7,000 cc's worth of injector for it and a big single turbo. Greatly tuned by one of the best tuners I could find, and we make about 500 horsepower right now. That's before we rebuild the motor so it can handle more power. But it's with a great feel suspension kit on there. We do have a angle kit on it, so we run a decent amount of angle. Everything from set on there is basic. I keep the car as chill as possible. Good cooling system on the car because, of course, you're going to want the car to stay cool. So I got with the overpowered Durali system. So they're oil cooler, they're fan setup. I don't really worry about temps too much, which is great. And then I'm also running a welded diff in the back just because it helps out with predictability in the car.
Is this particular RX-8 the top of the mountain for you, or are you eyeing another car as your tastes change, or are you a Mazda man for life?
So I would like to try something different at some point in time. I've driven different cars, but I would like to try maybe a nice LS built car. I've driven a couple 5.3s, a couple 6.0 like drift cars, but I want like a nice setup drift car. That would be nice to try out. That'd be a good experience from what I'm used to. I love turbos, I love superchargers, I love all different forms of it, but a different chassis also, maybe like a nice built 240SX, even a F, what was it, the Toyota H6s nowadays. Those are really, really good platforms. Those are like right out of the book. You can put suspension on those and go. Even Corvettes, for example, like the C5, C6, throw suspension on that, a small angle kit, and you're good to go. And those are like a cheater car, basically.
All right, so you just touched on it, but I'd like to drill down into this topic just a little bit. You mentioned some really good platforms, the C5 Corvette, the RXs, the Toyobaru triplets, the BRZ FRS 86. Say someone does get bit by the bug, they've gone out and found their car. You say that they can go out and drift in a box stock form on one of these cars, or do they need to do any easy or intensive modifications to get out on a drift track?
So when it comes to basically getting into it, like for a Toyota H6 or anything like that, suspension's the best way to start with it as well. But get used to your car is probably top notch. You can go stock as is, car's great right out of the box. But as soon as you put coilovers on it, you have better control of your car. But a little bit of angle kit on there, you have more steering angle to get deeper drifts. You can go faster if you want to as well. And that's literally the easiest way of getting right into it, is just going right into it.
Despite its growing popularity, I think it's still fair to say that drifting hasn't reached the mainstream motorsports critical mass yet, right? So is it tough to source parts for this kind of thing?
With drifting now kind of building back up, it was starting to ramp up, but as soon as COVID hit, it kind of took a huge deep dive to it, as well as any motorsports did. But now, since it's coming back up, there's a lot of places you can find cheap parts, but the only problem is that we need a place. There's a few places online you can get, the most one-stop shop place for it, which is hard to come across. But usually you can get coilovers pretty easily. You can usually get welded diffs, say if you want to go the welder rear end. You can ask a friend of yours who knows how to weld really good. You can find a shop who could do it for you. You can even buy some online that way.
And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention at least once that you could get a lot of these parts at summitracing.com, right?
So the good thing about Summit now is that I think we're going to start hopefully getting more involved with as far as like suspension parts. I know, for example, we do sell some things like ISC suspension, which is super, super nice. That's like entry-level coilovers, KWs. We do also do sell Ohlins, as if you want like the high-end coilovers and high-end suspension. But I know as far as your replacement parts, so when you're learning and things happen, we do have plenty of control arms. We do have plenty of ball joints, tower rod ends. We do also carry tires, for example, which is, I was surprised at some of the tires we sell and some of the wheels we sell. You don't have to get great wheels and tires, but it actually helps out a lot for lighter wheels, for less rotating mass, better tires for better control, just little things like that we do offer, which is great. Or even like electronic stuff as far as ECUs, we do sell Hall Tech, which is probably one of the best things I ever came across. We sell digital dashes, so if you go into like a deep dive into the sport, you can get like Power Tune Digital, for example, that we sell as well, which is probably one of my favorite dashes I've seen. And voila, you can put those two together, you basically have a great built car.
Yeah, I've seen those Power Tune dashes. Those are pretty neat.
So what's crazy is I have a dash that's a Fallout dash. So have you ever seen the show Fallout? My dashboard is Fallout, which is super super cool, and it actually moves and it's animated too. I think it's probably one of my favorite things I ever bought.
You mentioned with a smile earlier that quote unquote things happen as you get the hang of drifting. Is that a common thing? If someone's made the investment into the car, should they be concerned about pushing it too hard before their skills catch up with their vehicle?
Well, quote unquote, things will happen unless you're like a prodigy, which I mean, there's some people who can just pick up things pretty quick. But in my first instance, I'll use me for example, Killcare Raceway. If some people know, they used to have a giant tire covering a drainage ditch on the circle track. My first time, I hit the tire, flung the car up in the air, came back down, and just stood there and looked at it. I was like, oh, that's crazy. Well, after I put off track. And I bent a tie rod end. That wasn't fun, but we took a hammer out. We bent it as straight as possible. Guess what we did? We went back on track right after that too as well. It's never an easy thing, to be honest, because you're taking a whole car now. You're making a car do what it's not supposed to do. And for a second, that your anxiety gets high because as soon as you throw the car sideways, you instantly in your mind think, "Oh gosh, what's going to happen?" But now you're ready to, "Oh, let me grab this, let me try this." You know what's going to happen? You're going to spin out. And you're going to spin out again and spin out again until you get tired of like, okay, let me take a second to breathe, relax, talk to somebody at the track who's really good or somebody can help you out. And then realize, okay, I didn't realize I need to go not so much this time, or maybe I went too little this time. And then once you start to get it, you get your first corner down. Once you get your first corner down, you're like, oh yeah, I did this. This is so great. And then after that, you go to the next corner, you learn transitions. But the best way to start is do donuts and figure eights. Learn your transitions that way. So you avoid hitting things that you shouldn't be hitting.
You kind of led into the next question I was going to ask, but I'm going to ask it again anyway in case you have any additional insight. But what advice do you have for someone that really wants to take that first step to get involved in drifting?
So first and foremost, I say is get with the local person or local group or local organization for drifting. For me, for example, I am part of Vegas Drift staff. I've been helping Vegas Drift for a while. We have our own skid pad we have new people go to. We have figure eights, which you can learn, which is super great. We also have a section to the side where you can do a donut. So you learn your donut, learn your car control, learn your throttle control. Then you learn to do transitions around that other point they give you. So then you learn, okay, let me get one corner down. Let me do a donut or another donut, basically, essentially around another point. Then you start doing it back and forth. So then you start doing figure eights and you get consistent at it, learning your transitions very well.
You did it again. You dovetailed into the next question I was going to ask. Is there a place, say online, that someone can do their own research and try to find a local club in their region? What drifting resources are out there?
So Formula Drift, I know it's a big competition series, but they have a lot of information, which is super great as far as like how the sport is run, how the sport is done, different things like that. There used to be forums online a lot of times back when forums were really a thing. Facebook is probably a great option too as well. Look up anything drifting related. You can find all the information. Like if you have tires, for example, there's a great page called Drift Tire Reviews. What tires should I run? What tires is the best for smoke? What's best for control? And what's the best for longevity? Because of course you want tires to last because you're going to go through them. That's probably one of the better options. Probably say Facebook and just Facebook groups, or like I said, Google online too as well. Drifting in my area or drifting communities or drifting organizations, you'll see a lot of good places. Club Loose, for example, I've ran a couple of their events, which is they're usually Midwest, and they have amazing events. They have amazing stuff on their website. They've probably one of the nicest people I've ever come across. Drift Indy is another great one too as well. They just hosted a recent event over in Ohio as well, and they have probably the most inviting community that I've ever seen.
That's the hat trick because you're leading into the next question. And this will probably be the easiest one you can answer, and I think I already have an idea of what the answer is going to be, but I'll ask it anyway, because that's what I get paid to do. But what's the drifting community like? Is it pretty welcoming?
So what's funny is I'm going to say this is probably the most welcoming community you can come across in motorsports. And the reason why I say that is I don't judge other motorsports. So for example, you see NASCAR or people growing up with NASCAR, karting. What happens when you finish a race? You go back with your family, you go back with your team, and you're done. You go to see NASCAR, they have their teams, they're done. F1, they're so secluded, they don't even know what's going on. So they sit in the car, they talk to their team. Drifting, the person you are battling up against is your best friend. You break something. For example, Utah happened, from the drift happened. Car, I think it was broke something. I can't remember who it was, and I feel bad for not remembering. Oh, here it is. Matt Field and Dylan Hughes. Dylan Hughes' car ended up on top of Matt Field. What happened? They came both back to the pit, tried to help Matt get his car together. Not even on the same team. They helped him get his car together so they can both refinish the run together. You get done doing driving with your friends. Guess what happens? You all get out and have a great time and just go back and laugh at what just happened, or hey, well, let's try this the next time, or this is such a great time, opposed to most motorsports where when you're done, it's like, oh, that's the person, the enemy, that person's who you're up against. Drifting, it's like we're all a big giant happy family and we're all there to do the same thing. There's no negative towards each other or anything like that.
That's an awesome sentiment, and we just love hearing stuff like that. Now, say you are listening to this and you just want to watch, like you've heard us describe what drifting is, but you want to see it in action. Michael, do you have any good recommendations on top-tier events that the average American automotive enthusiast can attend live in person or maybe stream via some online channel? What are some big halo events for the sport that people should know about?
So the biggest events that happen over within the country worldwide. So worldwide, Drift Masters is probably one of the best ones you can watch. They do have locally as far as US. Grid Life is a great one to go to. Hyperfest in the Midwest. Hot Pit Auto Fest is probably one of the coolest events coming out now because it's actually created by a former drift driver, Jeff Jones. He made the series to actually help promote drifting, for example, for pro-am people who want to get their pro license and they get to battle against pros. Great one to go to. Another one too as well, Drift Indy. They have events that go everywhere. They even actually help run Drift Appalachia, which they're actually doing driving in the mountains, which is absolutely one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Like you can go on YouTube, check out Drift Appalachia. You'll see some of the craziest things I've ever seen. There's a guy drifting an old satellite, full built drift car, and it's the coolest. Like it's rowdy too. Drift Pony, which is basically a connection of Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, around there, and then even Florida's got OSW, super cool place too as well.
And you're out there on the West Coast and part of Vegas Drift. So is there stuff going on in your region?
Hot Pit Auto Fest is literally coming to Vegas the weekend before SEMA. And they're running a huge event, a huge thing going on there. Like that'd be great to go to too as well. Vegas Drift, we have our own events. We have Import Face Off, which is in December, which like I said, I'm part of too as well. Another great one to go to. Grid Life is this weekend over in Laguna Seca. That would have been probably a cool one to go see and go to because so much happens out there. Oh my goodness. I could tell you every event that happens across the states basically because I'm always following it.
So I can't believe I haven't asked this question yet, but Michael, how long have you been doing this and what are your future plans?
So funny enough is I actually started drifting in 2006. So it's been a while. My plans, I competed actually a couple times back in 2010, which was fun. Competition is really not for me unless it's like a grassroots events where it's just people having fun, little things like that. I continue to keep having fun with my friends, keep having fun with events, helping new drivers out who need the help or have questions. My Instagram, my email, my whatever's open free to anybody who has any questions or wants to learn how to get into it. His future plans is there's an event called Final Bout, which is happening next year. It's probably like the high class profile. This is like the ballers of ballers when it comes to drifting. It's like style driving. You're driving with a team too as well. That's basically on my radar for next year. And there's another event called UDC, so Ultimate Drift Challenge over on the West Coast. I'll probably try and hit that up too as well.
So drifting is what you love and you're sticking to it.
I plan on staying with that probably as long as I can. We used to have a great driver. His name was Steve Maxwell. Nicest person you'll ever meet. He was around in his late 60s with a C5 Corvette, then got a 350Z. He passed away recently, unfortunately, but he would have kept going on and on if he could. He was probably the biggest heart he had when he was inside of his car.
That's a great story. And you meet people like that through all facets of motorsports. It's a passion. What else can be said? Now, is it fair to say that, Michael, since you are out here, you are getting your hands dirty, you are turning wrenches on what is a real race car, is it fair to say that helps you help the customers at Summit Racing?
Being in drifting has helped me out as far as like knowing what breaks a lot. in for Summit Racing parts that are needed. What breaks? What's going to need replaced? What's happening? This motor is good for this. This motor's better for this. I know now more of like what LS are capable of, opposed to just I see it on screen and I'm like, oh, okay, well, you can buy this part. This part looks good. This part's here. Like we have a little bit of training for it. When you see it being used in the real world, and like literally at its topmost level, like screaming RPM levels, cars being bashed off the walls, clutches breaking, suspension parts breaking, anything as small as like lifters breaking, or even when you come to the point where a car overheats. Guess what that shows us? Oh, we need bigger radiators. We need better fans. We need better push rods. We need better, stronger forged parts. Like now I know what I'm selling to people and how they're using it. And that's probably one of the coolest things ever too. And that's just me being like, just to be honest about it, is that I like seeing the fact that this is getting used to its actual full potential. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and who can't get behind that? You know, we have an expression at Summit Racing called powered by enthusiasts, basically saying that many of us aren't just employees, but we're also in this hobby. Michael, you obviously know what you're doing, and I myself have an alarming amount of project cars and motorcycles dripping oil in my garage as we speak. And that's the God's honest truth, because we really do love this stuff, and we want to see you succeed at it too. Whether that's a car, truck, motorcycle, what have you. We want to help support your passion and your hobby so that you can get as much enjoyment out of it as we do. But I digress. We've been talking for well over 25 minutes now. Michael, I'm going to turn the microphone over to you. We've covered a lot of topics, but is there anything we've overlooked that you want to address now?
I mean, I'll tell this to anybody else. Go out and do it. Go out and try it. I guarantee you're going to have more fun than you ever expected. There's people who are scared of, and I understand like in vehicles, of like not being in control. But I guarantee you, once you get in the car, you will never not look back and think of that like, wow, that was probably one of the best moments I've ever had in a car. The community is amazing. Everybody loves everybody there. We're welcoming with open arms to anybody who wants to come and enjoy the sport. And one thing we do not promote is takeovers. I will say that out loud, just because that's what's ruining the car community. Let's keep everything on track. Let's keep everything within reason and legal.
Yeah, it's sad sometimes that we got to mention that, but come on. Keep it on the track. That's all there is to it. With that, Michael, I'm sure both of our bosses want us to get back to our real jobs. I will bid you adieu. I know personally I'm heading out to SEMA in a couple weeks, so hopefully we can hook up then and share some more stories. But until that happens, we've been talking with Michael Barbosa, Summit Racing sales team member and drifter extraordinaire. Thank you, Michael, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us.
Yeah, of course. Glad to. Anytime you need anything else, feel free to ask.
All right, see you around, man.
You take care.
This has been the On All Cylinders podcast.
Powered by Summit Racing.
Check out new episodes coming soon at OnAllCylinders.com.
OnAllCylinders.com.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.